Hello, hello, True Nature Medicine Tribe. It is a very hot and sweaty me coming to you with your Tuesday daily dose of body mind medicine. And I just want to say before we go any further, I am so grateful that I get to work with gutsy, fierce, wild women in my work in healing trauma, getting into root cause resolution, so that we can really stop telling the old stories and change the belief systems and all the programming in a very chaotic world. Hello, I love the hearts. So that we can step into what we come here to do every day and make a difference and create a positive impact in the world and in the leader that you're becoming, because you're going through challenges and you're willing to feel in order to heal the pain and the challenges. And oh my goodness, all these conversations are unscripted, as you know. I'm not asking you to opt into anything. I'm not selling you anything. I just believe that when you're authentic and when you're organic in the way that we communicate and connect to each other, that the people that are wanting to hear these little sound bites that I give, they show up and they ask how they can work with me, and they're willing to do the work and get some skin in the game. And if you're not ready for that, that's okay. I'll love you anyway, because I know how important healing is in support. Without support, without eyes on us, we don't get to shift and change. We don't get to align and stay in our truth and navigate our way through the bumpy, chaotic times that we're living in. And it's been really interesting. I don't know if you can relate to that, but just what's going on the rock right now, with the explosions, with the unconsciousness that's coming up everywhere. And not to make it significant, but to know, astrologically, we are all out of our true nature, and we're trying to get back. We're trying to wake up and come back to our hearts and remember what it means to be human kindness. And we can't do that on our own. And Scorpio is really coming through very strongly right now in so many of the people that I'm connecting with, that are telling me it's all about the controls and the power over. And I've had people tell me that they're just feeling overwhelmed and exhausted and just totally exhausted by what's being thrown at them right now. And that's been one of my clients that said the tax man just decided to pull all the money out of their accounts because they can. And another person saying that a company that she supplies that's gone into foreclosure or rescue rehabilitation or something, and she stands to lose a ton of her investment and a ton of money that's owed to her right now. And so much anger coming up right now all over the place. And I have to smile, because I know we're all doing the best that we can with what we have. And that, when you start to relate to bumpy transformation, how do you get through it? How do you come out relatively unscathed and a little wiser? It doesn't come with a manual, but in order to create, we have to often break down the old systems. And that's really what we're seeing, or what I'm aware of intuitively of what's happening, is that the old systems are breaking down. And it's uncomfortable, it's a little scary, a little frightening to charter these waters, because we've never been in them before. But we know that even though it's painful, it's temporary. And the sooner that we actually get to go into the shadows, to go and connect with the ghosts of Halloween, and use our ancestral helping spirits and our guides and the animal totems, and tune into that, the sooner that we actually can use that to transform everything, the trauma into Dharma. And it's by going through this that we get to change other people's lives. So that, the universal law is death and rebirth. The universal law is chaos. The chaos theory has been around forever. You just have to look at nature to look at how she gets to recalibrate and balance herself through the death and the rebirth cycle. If a tree falls, it decomposes and the new saplings come, but it needs the wisdom of the old trees to tell it how to grow into a forest, into a community that is supportive, that together that we can make so much change like that than we can on our own. And a lot of my clients and a lot of the people that are in my life are feeling like they're sort of in no man's land, that they're in this liminal space, which I've talked about a lot before, where what was is no longer, and where we're going and what we're becoming and what we're growing into as leaders, as transformational catalysts, as light bringers, as weavers of truth. It feels like there's nothing to catch you. There's no safety net in all of that. And we have to look at what's no longer working for us in order to gain the wisdom and have the courage to actually use that as kindling, as kindling to reignite. It's that phoenix rising energy where we have to let go and surrender of the things that are no longer working for us so that we can make new space and have new containers. And this is really what we talk about when I'm working with my VIP clients in how to create their diamond businesses, that not just support them, but allow them to create a greater positive impact because they're having the money to fight big oil conglomerates or change the way Monsanto and the Sitco model of health is working. And my Barbet is outside my window, and I love that because he shows up every time I go on live with you. But just know that you can't do any of this on your own. And I know I might be waffling a little bit. I'm actually going to go off the grid in the next couple of days because I'm recognizing my body is really physically and mentally exhausted. I've been holding space for a lot of big shifts and change for some very brave, fierce women that have been showing up and have the guts and are listening to their guts to actually step out of this craziness and step out of the madness and to also start to empower themselves to tell stories, not while they're still emotionally attached, but to actually allow themselves to rewrite a new path for themselves by going into the stories, right? Going into the shadows and transmuting that into the lightness of being from a place of non-attachment. So, remember, if you're working in life transformation, I know I work with a lot of women that are in our health coaches and are working with people's bodies. They're working in nutrition. They're working in the field of healing. And they recognize and realize now that we have to do the inner work. We have to reset our own nervous systems before we actually start to show up in a place where we can hold space, be that container, and create safety for our clients, because we are our own safety already. You can't do that if you're floundering around and throwing things out and expecting things to stick. So these conversations never go the way that I think they're going to go, but I really want to talk about how you can create a little bit more calm when you're maybe in those heated arguments, and you'll probably relate to things that started as really little niggles and end up going totally out of control, like a forest fire that's just burning everything in its path. And it's all about projections and hurt and assumptions. And I talk a lot about this in the Shadow Dancing Masterclass series, where we can really start to look at what's stopping us from having what we want, and also with my private clients. And if you're interested in that, let me know. It should be up in the store really, really, really soon, on how you can live into the 5 cornerstones of great relationship, which is honor, trust, kindness, vulnerability, and gratitude. But for now, the daily dose that I wanted to share, if you're interested in this, not destroying relationships, but going into expansive, generative relationships, I hope you stay with me. I'm not one of these in and outs that just kind of throw stuff at you and hope it sticks, but more wanting for you to grow into that space of intimacy in even the worst case arguments that maybe you're having right now, where you might know a lot of people in your life right now, and their personality is is that they would rather die than deal with conflict because they just can't stand the heat of social pressure. So they will do anything, including sacrificing their sense of self and integrity, rather than getting out from underneath an argument. And if that sounds like you, I have plenty of videos on how to do that, and plenty of programs on how to use conflict as a catalyst. But you know, we don't really consciously want to destroy our relationships, but this is what happens when we get into conflict. You know, we get very defensive. There's a line that we cross, and there's an aspect on the nervous system that's simply out of blood. It's that fight, flight, or freeze response on the nervous system. And you're probably going to find that as a child, if you relate to any of that, you never got taught how to resolve conflict. And maybe that's why you're in the position that you are in today, because chances are you spent your childhood involved in relationships that were essentially based on control dynamics. And if you haven't taken the ACE test to find out what your ACE score is, and if you don't know what ACEs are, it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I will post that link again, but you can go to accessyourtruenature.com and take the test, because when you start to learn how your biography doesn't have to become your biology, that's when the healing starts. Because when we're not addressing this at a root cause level, this is where 10, 20, 30 years down the line, something comes out of nowhere and you get ill and you suddenly have cancer, or you are creating chronic fatigue, or you're anxious because you haven't resolved and rewired your nervous system as a secure adult, creating safety for yourself. So you might want to check that out. But if you know somebody like that, you might know somebody, it's all about the safety, right? You're naturally distrusting, so it takes very little for you to think that someone is not going to be in your best interests or capitalize on your own best interests. So they're always a threat to you. You will treat them as such. And if you know that that's you, when this video is over, I maybe want you to just go back into my YouTube archives and just look at some of the videos that I have there on trust and how to trust yourself. But for now, just know that if you're with somebody that it naturally escalates into conflict, and maybe that's you, if you escalate arguments, or you're experiencing relationships where there's a great deal of escalation, or you're feeling a resistance to any of these suggestions that I'm hoping to give you in the rest of this Facebook Live, then I want you to, just invite you to look at the potential that you don't even want to maybe go into actually resolving conflict, because it's possible that is happening for you. Hi, Margaret. So I wanted to ask you, what's the value? What do you get out of a fight? And what would happen if you took responsibility for coming down off that high arousal and taking responsibility for your part in it? Because there's a lot of fear around that of escalating or de-escalating. And you'll probably find there's a trauma at the root of that fear, that you're afraid that some bad monster or boogeyman is going to come out and gobble you up. And that's that predator and prey aspect that we've known as children, and we couldn't fight or flee, so we go into freeze. So what triggers you is going to give you a lot of insight into when you first felt that exact feeling, when you actually tap in and find out where it isn't safe for you to be soft and open and vulnerable. I'll give you an example. Once I was working with somebody that was a real escalator. She provoked a conflict in her life, and when we went into root cause resolution, we recognized that when she was 2 years old, she had a narcissistic mother, and nothing that she could do would help, and she just had to wait around and be abused until her mother decided to feel better, and then pretend nothing ever happened. So there was no way for her to actually resolve or make any sense of this, because she was in survival mode, and anytime she tried to resolve that, she got hurt even more. So how she survived her mother was to become very cold and abrasive. And I talk a lot about this in my work with adverse childhood experiences and how to reset your nervous system. And just know that a lot of our family is full of control and unhealthy dynamics where no one really is there for growth and resolution of this. So what can you do if you're a natural escalator? or perhaps you don't know how to bring yourself out of that high arousal state. And what could be more healthy for you in resolving conflict when you're up in that place? So take a breath and just know that 99.9% of the time, if the conflict is just actually getting worse, there's conflict between the parties involved. And I want you to think of this gap as that, like, you're on one continent and the person that you're in conflict with is on another part of the world, and you're trying to argue your point of view and your rightness of being, and you're not even arguing about the same thing because you don't live the way the other person lives. And I live with an Aryan who likes to fight about fighting, and he loves to be loud, and he gets louder and louder and louder. And a lot of times it's just like, what are we even arguing about? Most of the time we're not even conscious enough to actually look at what is the hurt, what is the truth of what's going on here. Think about two people in a company, and they're talking about their concerns, but no one's listening to the other, and everything that they're saying just makes the situation worse. And you might find that one person's arguing about who to hire, the other one's arguing about the feeling that the person doesn't have enough concern, or that his needs are not being met in general. And this is such a classic dynamic between men and women, by the way, that we have to be willing of what's going on at the core, and put ourselves in the mirror of that. You have to be willing to hire people and support to actually know what your key issue is, what the root cause of what it is that's causing your suffering and disease and disharmony in the first place. So oftentimes the surface situation that you think you're arguing about is actually never what you're really arguing about. And I saw this with my sisters the other day, but that's a whole nother story in relationships. But if you want to know more how you can go deeper into this, or get onto the same page with someone that's in argument with you, and you're just being completely blown up or burnt up by the fire, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions. And I hope you have a notepad near you, or go back and listen to this again. But I want you to tap into, what are you really upset of in this situation? What's the feeling underneath the feeling? Because it's never really about what you're arguing about. It's always something a lot deeper. And it's one that we need to start to be able to make the other person aware of what it is and where you feel your needs are not being met. And we also have to be clear, both parties, what the target is. Where do you want to go in the argument? Because the more you get trapped in the rightness, rather than looking at where do you want this conversation to take you, the easier it is to resolve it. And it's not always possible to tell people when they're heated like that on what your needs are, because they're already tuned out and wanting to be right. But a lot of times too, it's that we're not committed to actually getting the resolution. So I think we have to get really truthful and breathe into that place, and then consciously focus on what it is you're wanting to share with the other person, and be intentional in what you're speaking of, and being willing to look at the rage that's boiling up in your body that is easily expressed at rage. But I want you to imagine, where do you feel that in your body? And a lot of times it's in the throat or the ribs or in your chest. Sometimes it's in your gut. So I want you to just, in that moment, recognize and slow yourself down. Take a few breaths. And maybe you want to bring in a beautiful pink healing light, and then direct it at that part that is intense in that feeling of emotions, and hold it like a mother would hold a child, rather than trying to suppress and ignore it. So that the person, the wise woman in you, the adult in you, can actually take care of that temporal trigger, so that you can communicate in a way that doesn't destroy your relationships. Another thing that you could do, and maybe you've heard this from experts in the past, but unless you're dealing with two people that are soothed by alone time, this one really drives me crazy when they say walk away, step away. Please do not take a time out. Do not leave in the middle of a heated conflict, because most people feel that is a sense of abandonment, and that just totally severs the relationship. And to me, it's a terrible technique unless you cannot control physically abusing the other person, or if you feel like your life is in danger. And I'll say it again, when you walk away from a conflict like that, it's perceived as abandonment, and it brings up more insecurity. So please don't do it. Okay, stay in it and hold that space, because you need to feel safe, and so does the other person. So both people in the conflict have to ask themselves, what is going to feel me more safe, a little bit more safer in this moment? We have to learn to deactivate that fight-flight part of the nervous system. And maybe that means that you hold yourself and you just make skin contact. Maybe it's about wrapping something around you or drinking some warm water. But be willing to meet the safety needs of you so that you can come off this high arousal. And I cover this a lot in my Out of the Blues program, where we really start to look at neuromodulation and how to heal on all 5 levels, because we need to give this attention before the actual argument can even continue. And this is 100% accurate. If you're shut down from being touched, we close up when we're feeling threatened. And the bottom line is if you've crossed that line of safety or threat, you have to directly deal with the threat, not the details of the argument that you probably can't even remember you were fighting about in the first place. Another thing is that when you're almost switching yourself off and you just feel like you're heading into that relationship danger zone. So what I want you to do right here and now, without leaving that person that you're in conflict with, and this has to be agreed with, this is about open, serious communication in that face of conflict, is to sit down, take the lead and go internally together. Get clear on what are you really afraid of in this situation. Or maybe you're afraid the person's going to leave you, but be willing to listen to what is it that you're really afraid of, because anytime you're leading with defensiveness or anger or rage or aggression, underneath that is always the fear of being powerless or abandoned. So ask the person, what is it that I'm feeling fearful about? And ask yourself that too. And let's pretend you're maybe one of these people that have a really hard time escalating through your voice. Here's a strategy that might work for you. When you actually sit down and get a pad or a laptop or something and do it together, right? Because this is the intimacy of conflict resolution. And write down what it is that came up for you, what comes up for you when you actually get into that space of vulnerability, and where you're actually willing to consider the other person's perspective. And do that separately, and then you're going to swap over and read that space. And then you have a choice. If you trust not to get higher pitched and louder, and you're able to calmly discuss what's going on for you, that's where we want you to go. But if you don't trust yourself to escalate with your voice, then you don't want to use your voice. You want to just keep writing back and forth. Maybe use one computer or one pad and pen, and you write, and then the other person types their response. And this is not about judging or making people wrong or going into blame or shame, but it gives you a pause. It gives you time to slow down as you're writing, right? We're using a different part of the brain in that process. Another way that you can do this is to really look at being not as non-threatening as possible. It means you really want to reach out and touch the other person, or allow the other person to touch you. And that for me is never blame, never shame, never justify, and never make anybody wrong. And I am the first to tell you, and I know you're probably saying, but Sarah Jane, in the heat of the moment, things came out of my mouth that I regret, and maybe I threw something. And I'm not saying you're going to get this right overnight. I screw it up sometimes, but I'm inviting you to slow yourself down and just have a little patience with yourself. You didn't get where you are now learning how to keep yourself safe or go into the predator or prey, or the way your nervous system is telling you to run or fight or freeze. So please give yourself a break and just practice this. It's new. You've forgotten how to do this, and this is about mastering human kindness. So look at how can I touch, because touch naturally soothes. Maybe you rock yourself a little bit, maybe you reach out and touch, and be willing for the person to pull away. But your body language is going to tell you, I'm not closed to you, I'm actually open to you. And this is about eye contact. This is about not folding your arms. It's about keeping your heart open, because I want to be connected to you, right? We don't want to create more separation. So if you can, and if it's appropriate, do that. And then another one, and I love that Anjana's here because she is my joyologist client, and she's brilliant at doing this, is see if you can bring some humor in. And obviously you're not wanting to do this if you're with someone that's very unsafe and very triggered. And if you start to bring humor in, they're going to say that you don't care, and you're laughing at me, and you're making me wrong, and you're making me feel ashamed. And this is just going to increase their hyper aroused state. But if you can bring humor in, and then start to look at what is it that this person is desperately crying out for. What are they craving? What do they need? And then we need to look at how can we create a win-win situation for both of you, right? And we have to look at how we deal with negative emotions. How you do that is going to give you so much insight into what the other person needs, that you love and care about, by caring about yourself first and being able to keep strong boundaries for yourself in the process. And, you know, maybe the next thing for you to learn, if you can, is that if you want to bring down that conflict, you have to really be in touch with your body, in receptivity, in compassion, in wanting to learn from the other person. I think we attract what we're ready to learn. But it does require open, compassionate space for you to actually be there. And then to take responsibility for your role in contribution to that person feeling powerless or ashamed or blamed or afraid of being abandoned. You know, I think that's so important. And this is where gratitude and apology for people that do escalate is really what they want to be. You know, they want to hear you say, I'm so sorry. So this is not about being perfect, about admitting to a mistake. It's very hard for people that are used to situations and relationships that are about nothing but power dynamics. And the narcissist is one of those that knows how to use that to their advantage. And it feels like a position of weakness. So obviously if you're not trusting another person to sink into a place of surrender, that's most of the time when control dynamic freaks and narcissists go in for the kill. So, you know, if you would rather die than apologize, chances are that's probably the reason why, because it felt like a death every time somebody had power over you. So watch out for that too. And you know, the other one is pretty self-explanatory, and that is avoid triggers, or at least recognize your own. You know, track your emotions. If you know somebody, and I'm talking about loved ones here, we know what their triggers are. They know how to push our buttons. So don't push their buttons if you want to bring conversation down. If you're really wanting something because you actually don't want to back down and you're wanting to go for the kill shot, you're going to push buttons because you're getting something out of that. So look at what's the value, what's the punishment, what's the reward for you, and then avoid triggering people that are already triggered. You know, don't bring things up in an argument that you know are going to piss people off, because that's who they are. So, you know, let's look at some other ways to resolve conflict. You know, I think this is the greatest gift to all of us, to be called into being more intimate and more embodied. And we can either answer that call, or we can allow the conflict to allow us to go deeper and deeper into the muck and the mire of unconsciousness. So just know, you know, this is about depth of intimacy. It's about harmony. It's about balance, to be called into creating that for ourselves. And I'd rather choose that. I'd rather be wrong and free than right and defending my point of view. And it doesn't always work. And it's not always about ending conflict for the sake of ending conflict either, right? It's not about a win-lose situation. And it's very hard to do that when we're feeling unsafe, because we want to go for the kill shot. We want to control, and we want to win. We want to be right. So next time you get in a fight that's escalating, I hope that you try some of the things that I talked about today, and just make sure that your flame is the phoenix rising. It's not one that's going to get you to have this combustible fire that absolutely wipes out everything in your path, including your own health and your own happiness and your own growth. So I hope that was helpful today. Thank you for the clients. You know who you were today. There is always the same common theme of urgency that comes up when I do these Facebook Lives. And I'm hoping that through them being willing to be vulnerable, for them willing to be wrong and actually learn around tracking emotions, learn what it feels like to be in in the other person's point of view, and look at everything as just an interesting point of view, that's when we really get to reclaim and live our truth and our true nature, and we're able to live fulfilled and happy and free, because everything is just an interesting point of view. So if you are feeling that sting of the scorpion coming at you, if you're feeling the rage boiling and simmering inside of you, please go and check out the YouTube video that I made that was all about utilizing anger as a healthy expression to drive and motivate you forward toward the things that you want and away from the things that are no longer working for you. Please check it out and take the ACE test, and just remember that sometimes things have to break in order for us to outcreate and learn from that, and allow ourselves to have that breathing room to integrate all the parts and pieces that are still not feeling safe and are still feeling wounded and are still feeling hurt, and feel all the emotions, because that is healthy pendulation. You can't be happy all the time. And you can't be sad all the time. So if you are feeling that you're out of control, you're feeling things are out of control, if you're feeling that you have no control, go back, listen to this again, and just remember that in order to hold new space for new things, we're in this 9 year of rebirth, of 9 years is all about completion. Right? We have to complete. We have to go through this. We have to feel in order to heal. And that means feel everything, but also know that in tracking the emotions, in going into the shadows, in going into looking at where you're projecting hurt with hurt, or you're running away, where you can actually start to create safety for yourself, and so that you can show up in a new space where you are the leader that you came here to be. You have a purpose to live in with, and you cannot do this unless you actually heal your nervous system, unless you actually start to take responsibility for the part that you're playing in all the trauma, drama, and emergency, and find a kind of way to show up. And let's face it, I'm all for meditation, I'm all for salutation, I'm all for verbal clearing, but you can't insulate parts and pieces of that as parts and pieces of yourself. We have to look at this as a fully holistic way of healing, and work on all levels of it. And we can't do it on our own. We're used to waking up in tribe. We're used to having eyes on us telling us that we can go, that we can do this, that we are fierce and wild, and that we are playing a vital role in the survival of humanity itself, and in our tribes, and in our families, and in our communities. And if you're a healer listening to this and you're in life transformation, do your work and find someone that you trust yourself enough to hold that container and space for you to build a new nest and feather your nest, which is after all what niche means. So thank you for being with me. I will probably be a little quieter over the next few days. I'm going to go off the grid. I'm going to reconnect and fill my body up with the beautiful ocean in Neisner. I have some animal communication work that I'm going to be doing with a forest elephant. And if you're in Neisner area, pop in, say hello. Tell me what you need, and I will be popping in, maybe, because I know myself, and I know I'm here to serve, and I'm here to give generously, and it's probably an impossible thing to even put that demand on myself to go totally off the grid, but I will be checking in with you. Let me know what you need. Practice the tools today. Thank you for being here. I love you guys, and whatever you're doing, be amazing. And remember, the world's not waiting for someone like you. The world is waiting for you, and what only you bring into the world as only you can. So do the work, go into the shadows, clear out the skeletons in your closet, bring in your ancestral helping spirits. You are so supported, and the universe will meet you there. But we have to get out of the victimology of the old stories and start to rewrite new stories, taking with us the insight that we have learned through the challenges, through the heartache, through the breakups, and through places in your life that are breaking right now. So just know that you're not alone, and know that you're loved. And check out the peace meditation that I did last night. I know a lot of you asked for it when I was doing my new moon intention setting, and I put out my crystal grid, and I did some of my own invocations with spirit. So if you'd like more of that, go over to my SoundCloud account, or tell me what you need so that we can have more of these amazing conscious connections and conversations. And thank you for being here. You matter to me. I love you lots. Take care. Bye. Mwah.